Hello everyone, I'm Juan Manuel Fernández and welcome to my final project for the course School Organization and Student Diversity. My hypothetical school is called Raíces de Futuro. It is a public and bilingual school in Cejín with 250 students from diverse cultural backgrounds. Around 20% come from immigrant countries, including Morocco, Bulgaria, and Bolivia. 10% are identified with special educational needs, predominantly autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Regarding families and their views on ICT in the classroom, 90% advocate for a critical and balanced use, while the remaining 10% prefer traditional methods. The 5 main school values are inclusion, holistic development, democratic participation, collaboration, and continuous professional development. On screen, you can see my interaction with Gemini, which suggested 10 key measures for my school's development plan. I chose the 5 ideas that I consider best fit with the school's context. This measure consists of the creation of a family connection center at school with multilingual staff to facilitate communication in different languages and overcome linguistic and cultural barriers. This method is highly appropriate as a significant percentage of students come from other countries, including non-Spanish speaking countries. Decree 359/2009, which regulates the educational response to student diversity in public schools in the region of Murcia, promotes the creation of inclusive educational environments, which implies collaborating with families and adapting to the linguistic and cultural diversity of the community. The actors affected by this measure are immigrant families, teachers, and the administrative staff, who are responsible for communicating with these families. This initiative strengthens communication between the school and families in order to support student learning. The objective of this measure is to promote the continuous professional development of staff through courses and workshops, providing them with the skills to respond effectively to diversity and to integrate ICT critically and appropriately. This is a very appropriate measure as an important percentage of students, 10%, have SEN, so staff must be highly trained in inclusive strategies and the pedagogical use of technology. Decree 359/2009 in Article 36 highlights the need for the continuous professional development of teachers concerning attention to diversity. This measure is also supported by Article 102 of LOMLOE. The agents affected by this measure are the management team, who is the training manager, teachers, support staff, and of course, students, who are the direct beneficiaries. This initiative improves teachers-students relationships by implementing more appropriate and effective teaching and learning strategies. This measure consists of developing a clear school policy on ICT integration, including aspects such as screen time and the types of digital tools according to age group. Families will participate in its design so that the policy reflects a consensus. This measure is aligned with the school context, as there are different perspectives on technology in the classroom. Establishing a policy in consensus helps us fairly decide how and when to use ICT. Article 35 of Decree 359/2009 promotes the implementation of new technologies, especially ICT, when addressing diversity. The agents that are affected by this measure are students and their families, teachers, and support staff. Overall, this measure strengthens the relationship between the school and families by reaching a common agreement on the use of technology. This measure involves creating flexible learning spaces that adapt to different learning styles, combining areas for reflection, collaboration, and practical activities. Besides, it entails providing a wide range of resources, books, hands-on materials, technological resources, among others. The creation of flexible spaces can benefit all students as they can adapt to their learning styles. Therefore, I consider it to be appropriate for the center. Although no specific measures are mentioned for children with functional diversity. We'll come back to this in question 3. Additionally, Decree 359/2009 backs up this idea in articles like 3, 5, and 6. The actors affected by this measure are the management team, teachers, support staff, specialists, and students who once again are the direct beneficiaries. Overall, this measure mainly promotes collaboration between teachers. To ensure that attention to diversity is as effective as possible, it is essential to collaborate with the broader community. With this 5th measure, the school wants to strengthen ties with local entities and associations. This is a highly appropriate measure because working with the wider community expands the resources available to support students and their families. The importance of teamwork is recognized in Article 38 of Decree 359/2009. The agents affected by this proposal are the management team who coordinates partnerships, collaborating entities, teaching staff, students, and their families. Community partnerships reinforce the relationship between the school and its environment and promote coordination between teachers and external professionals, which strengthens families' confidence in the center. The AA proposal doesn't delve into functional diversity, which includes ASD and ADHD. Although the 4th measure makes reference to flexible learning spaces, it does so in a general sense, without mentioning specific measures adapted to these children's learning styles. Students with ASD, for example, benefit from clear routines and visual content. Children with ADHD learn best with dynamic and short tasks. There are 2 types of relationships that aren't directly covered: peer-to-peer relationships and direct relationships between teachers and students with SEN at an individual level. If I were the principal of a primary education school... Wait. Yes, this is better. I would implement these 5 measures to improve the information my community receives about digital transformation in the classroom. To begin with, I would organize face-to-face meetings with parents, 3 during the course. They would be differentiated by cycle, as the integration of ICT depends on the characteristics and objectives of each cycle. The purpose of these meetings wouldn't just be to inform about digital transformation, but also to provide an open space for dialogue where families could share their questions and concerns. This measure mainly reflects the democratic leadership style, as it encourages the active participation of families. It strengthens 2 key factors: effective communication and trust between the school and families. The school's website is the central point of communication. I would include a Q&A section on the web related to the use of technology, so that all interested could express their doubts. Besides, automatic answers to frequently asked questions would be set up. This section aligns with 2 principles of the strategic leadership style: effective planning and the efficient use of technological resources. Moreover, this section improves communication and trust with families through an accessible channel where they can receive quick answers. This proposal seeks to develop the communicative competence of the teaching staff to clearly and coherently communicate the digital transformation process to families. Training would include workshops on effective communication, the use of digital tools, and spaces for pedagogical reflection. This proposal is aligned with the transformational leadership style, as it promotes the professional development of teachers. Furthermore, it strengthens trust between teachers, families, and students through clear communication during the process of digital transformation. We are in 2025 and social media has become a key channel for community communication. In my school's networks, an exclusive space will be dedicated to the use of technology. This way, students' digital experiences could be shared in a variety of formats. This measure reflects transformational leadership, as it aims to inspire the educational community by making students' digital experiences visible. The aim here is to motivate and inspire all actors in the community to become more involved in the teaching-learning process. The last initiative involves holding demo days or demonstration days once every term. In these demo days, teachers and students would present to families and those interested the progress related to digital transformation in the classroom. This aligns with the democratic and transformational leadership styles. On one hand, it promotes the participation of teachers, students, and families. On the other hand, the transformational aspect shows up in the intention to motivate and inspire the community, bringing it together for a common goal. The main factors associated with this measure are trust, collaboration, and commitment. To explain how the education system has evolved from a segregated to an inclusive model, I will refer to 5 educational laws. I will exemplify this with a hypothetical case, that of Gabriel, a child with ASD Level 1. The LODE, although it recognized quality education as a right for all children, promoted segregation. Students with disabilities were schooled in special centers. Gabriel would likely have been schooled in one of these centers. In private schools, his admission would depend on the school's willingness. The LOCSE introduced normalization and school integration. It promoted curricular adaptations, and special education was exclusively for children whose needs could not be properly covered in public schools. In a public school, Gabriel would be in a mainstream classroom, and he would only be transferred to a special center if he could not be properly supported there. In a private school, he could be admitted, but support and specialists were not guaranteed. The LOE focused on providing schools with the necessary resources, including support staff and organizational methods. In a public school, Gabriel would be included in a mainstream classroom with the support of specialized teachers. On the other hand, the law began to require private schools minimum attention to diversity, but in practice, they still had no obligation to do so. The LOMCE introduced differentiated educational pathways at early ages, a measure criticized for contributing to segregation. In a public school, Gabriel might have been directed towards less academic pathways. Private schools still had no obligation to attend diversity, with families being responsible for seeking external support. The LOMLOE, the current law, conceives inclusion as a key principle, promotes universal design for learning, and forbids discriminatory practices, evolving towards a more inclusive model. Currently, in a public school, Gabriel would have the right to remain in a mainstream classroom with the necessary support. Regarding private schools, the law requires them to respect inclusion. In fact, state-subsidized private schools must have an attention diversity plan. I think a 9 is well deserved because I've tried to apply all the knowledge acquired during the course to provide the most complete answers possible. The most important idea I've learned is that every decision made at school, grouping students together, exercising a type of leadership, has significant implications for the entire educational community. Everything is interconnected. Before taking the school organization course, I couldn't have imagined how complex it is to design a timetable for primary education following the educational legislation. and I became very aware of this in task 3. I've learned that student diversity is constantly increasing and that often the resources available at school are not enough to address it properly, which requires broader collaboration and support. After completing this project, I'm much more aware of how crucial it is to effectively attend to diversity, especially today when the goal is to move towards a more inclusive education. To conclude, I've learned that in a world that is constantly evolving, a school organization must adapt to the changing needs of the community, so it must be dynamic and flexible. As for attention to diversity, I understood that the school must adapt to each student's needs, not the other way around. Before finishing, I would like to read a quote by Marian Wright Edelman. She stated, "Education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and world better than you found it."